Year one of life in the SEC for Boomer Sooner approaches. What is the most important game for Oklahoma in the 2024 season? Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. We're brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Guys, download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use promo code SECU for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's our friends at Prize Picks, promo code SECU to get your first deposit match today. Brent Venables leads the Oklahoma Sooners into a new era as life in the SEC set to begin this fall. And as we take a look at the 2024 schedule, what is the most important game for OU in this 2024 slate? A slate, guys, that most have deemed one of the most difficult in the SEC this fall. And guys, as we pull up this schedule, and I think what's been really interesting this offseason, guys, is you see the Vegas over-under win total, and folks coming into this year have been somewhat conservative about expectations for Oklahoma. Hey, if they go 7-5 in year one or 8-4, that'll be a successful year. Look at this slate of games. Look at this schedule. It's going to be a gauntlet. Oklahoma fans are not buying into that, right? This is Oklahoma football we're talking about. It's about winning 10, 11, competing for national championships. Hey, in this new era, getting to a 12-team college football playoff. And so if Boomer Sooner's going to do that, there's a couple games on this schedule. If you're going to overachieve in year one, if you're going to reach the expectations and live up to the standard you believe Oklahoma football should be, there's a couple games on this schedule you can look at as games that are absolutely pivotal and are crucial to be able to do that. Guys, you start with the SEC opener, week 4 against Tennessee. I mean, this one, you talk about storylines. It's got all the storylines you could ask for. Josh Heupel coming back to his old stomping grounds. He won a national championship there in Norman. He now leads his Tennessee Volunteers into town. I think the two programs similar from the standpoint of college football playoff expectations in a 12-team college football playoff era. Hey, how about the first SEC road game at Auburn? That one's going to be really tricky. I think Oklahoma fans going to learn very quickly how difficult playing at Jordan-Hare can be. Of course, guys, Red River speaks for itself, right? You beat the rival, you beat Texas. I think especially, too, guys, with all of the hype and hoopla that Texas is getting, and certainly they're getting much, much more of it than OU. I think that one's really big, again, for a number of reasons, but I think also year one SEC, you can announce to the world, hey, don't forget about us. Our stock should be higher than our arch rival to the south. You look at the rest of the schedule, guys. At Ole Miss is a massive game. At Mizzou, I talked about this yesterday when we talked about Mizzou's most important game of the year, the most underrated, in my opinion, bad blood game of this season. Alabama late at LSU. So, again, pick your poison, right? Take your pick. When you talk most important game, there are a number of different directions you can go here. But the direction that I go, guys, when I look at this schedule, and again, what's been so interesting for Oklahoma is there's been a lot of mixed reviews or a lot of mixed predictions or a lot of mixed opinions on what OU is going to be this year. You've got some folks who think, hey, this is a very proud and history-rich and tradition-rich program. They're going to keep that thing going. This talk of Oklahoma maybe going 6-6 or 7-5, it's baloney, right? They're going to be at minimum an 8 or 9 win football team and competing for the college football playoff in year one. And there's not going to be any growing pains, Big 12 to SEC. OU going to keep things rolling. And then you've got another group of people that say, you got question marks here. You got question marks there. Is Brent Venables the right guy to lead you in the SEC? Is Oklahoma, especially in the trenches, which is where games are won in the SEC, are they ready to compete at the highest level? And you've got folks that think, guys, that it's going to be a really rough year one for Brent Venables and company. You got folks that think it's going to be a very difficult transition and that Oklahoma could be fighting for 6-6, just fighting for bowl eligibility a year after winning double-digit games. So when I look at this schedule, guys, And I think the over-under win total right now in Vegas, I think it's still 7.5. It may have jumped to 8. I'm not exactly sure, but it's around that number. If Oklahoma is going to exceed expectations, if they're going to be a contender at any point this year for the college football playoff, and if they are going to change the mind of so many doubters that believe that it's going to be a difficult transition for Oklahoma, all we've heard about all offseason is the Sooners aren't ready to compete in the trenches. The Sooners aren't ready for what the SEC is going to deliver to them when it comes to line of scrimmage play. You want to get rid of all that preseason narrative and all that talk and all that doubt? Guys, the most important game for Oklahoma in this 2024 season, it is that SEC opener, in my opinion, against Tennessee. Setting the tone in year one of life in the SEC, guys, I think is critical because we expect you're going to be 3-0. Temple's going to be a blowout. I think Houston and Tulane are actually somewhat interesting non-conference games, but Oklahoma should win both. You should be 3-0 going into that game against Tennessee. And when you think about guys like what that game means, the first ever SEC matchup in program history, it is going to be an insane environment there in Norman. Josh Heupel coming back to town. Like I mentioned earlier, guys, it's storylines abound for this one. And Tennessee is going to be very good this year, guys. Tennessee is a realistic, I think, college football playoff contender. And they've got one of the best front sevens, in my opinion, in college football, led by one of the best players in college football in James Pierce on the edge. So, if you want to get rid of all that offseason noise and all that offseason chatter, the offensive line's not good enough, the quarterback's a new guy, the line of scrimmage as a whole can't compete, Oklahoma's not ready. You want to silence all of that. Go out and beat Tennessee. Go out and beat Tennessee. Start 4-0. Start out SEC play 1-0. Guys, I'm telling you, the narrative on Oklahoma, it flips overnight if they can find a way to beat the Tennessee Vols. It flips overnight if Oklahoma wins that football game. Because then all of a sudden, you're sitting 4-0. Yes, you have to go to Auburn, but you're going to feel pretty good after beating Tennessee. You can go in there and beat an Auburn team that still has Peyton Thorne as their quarterback. Then you'll have the bye week, guys. All of a sudden, you could be 5-0 going into Red River. And we saw last year, guys, hey, take nothing for granted in that game. You never know. All bets are off. That game, it seems like outside of a couple years, that game is always close. If you're 5-0, rolling with confidence, coming off a bye week, you're going to be fresh. Who knows what happens? Guys, we get to midway point in the season, we could be realistically talking about, man, we slept on Oklahoma all preseason. We shouldn't have done it. They're sitting here top 10 in the polls, and they're right there in prime position for the college football playoff. But it starts with that game against Tennessee. It starts with that SEC opener. So, guys, when I look at this 2024 schedule, the first SEC slate for Oklahoma, there are a lot of big games on this schedule. It's one of the toughest slates that the SEC presents to anyone in this conference. But if you want to silence all of the offseason talk, all of the offseason chatter, all the offseason narrative, if you want to silence all the critics and show that you're not only ready to arrive in the SEC and compete, but you're ready to kick the freaking door down. It starts in week 4 against Rocky Top when Josh Heupel and company come to town. Oklahoma can go from a bowl game hopeful, a 7 or 8 win hopeful, to a realistic college football playoff contender with a 1-0 start in SEC play. So, guys, when you take a look at the 2024 schedule, what would you deem as the most important game for Boomer Sooner? Do you agree with me? Is it that game against Tennessee? Is it against Texas? Is it Ole Miss? Is it Mizzou? Is it Bama, LSU? Take your pick. There's a number. But what would you say is the most important game of the 2024 season for Oklahoma football? Guys, that's going to do it for me. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, guys, I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.